Ja, meine Damen und Herren, liebe Freunde, wir freuen uns ganz besonders, heute unser erstes Projekt im Rahmen des
Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, we are particularly happy to start off the first opening program of 100 years of now. That's the housing question. Now, why should we start with the housing question? It's not one topic among many, but one to reflect today's problems, the problems of the world today, including demographic change and turbo capitalism. Shrinking peripherals, growing cities, migration and flight. Against the backdrop of these developments, there are a number of questions we need to raise. Who do we want to live with? What's the social composition of cities? What's the particular way of articulating one's needs in spaces, how to combine leisure time and labor? How do we want to live our everyday lives? Housing is also an important subject matter because the housing market is increasingly capitalizing. Buildings are being erected as investments and not to serve the primary purpose of having people live in these houses. The social housing programs have been abandoned almost completely in the last decades, which means that the needy have increasingly difficulties in finding a home in the centers. People talk about spatial alternatives for refugees, which is part of the general housing question. Here we see, in particular, the problems due to the fact that the state has withdrawn from the housing sector, i.e., we are dealing not only with an architectural problem, we are dealing, first of all, with a social problem. We need to consider the users and what the trends I'm describing means for them. We've been able to set up links with 4 initiatives, Stille Straße, Kotting and Co-Collapse, and the Realism Working Group, user groups on the one hand, and with Ensemble Baubau, Dogma and the Studio Telecruz and Foreman were our architectural partners in order to set up projects in order to focus on a user-oriented housing approach. Of course, many of what we need is contrary to the 100-year-old logic we have seen on the housing market so far. Housing, a project by the Columbia University, has focused on these trends, and we've invited them here. But we've also invited Martha Rosler and her photo and video works of the 1980s. They were made many years ago, but they were visionary as we know today because they anticipate the human right of housing. Martha Rosler also focused on the connection between homelessness and gentrification. On the artistic level, her documentary research-based practices are pioneering.
Auf der Grundlage historischer Archivrecherchen entwickelt wurde, verfolgt Maria Eichhorns.
Another interesting intervention in this respect is Maria Eichhorn's project, because on the floor of the House of World Cultures, she shows the former buildings that stood here, including a famous institute which used to be one of the centers of Berlin's homosexual scene. These lines show important elements of the past as far as housing is concerned, which are necessary in order to understand the situation we are in today. I would like, at the end of my brief introduction, thank all participants for the very constructive collaboration in the last years, and I'm looking forward to 2 rewarding and exciting days.